We are here on page 708 in the Tanya, in our kabbalistic life plan for how to master the balance of body and soul. And we are in the midst of learning one of the most applicable and useful meditations in the entire Tanya, and really from everything that I've learned, from any meditative systems, whether Zen karate that I've learned, whether Buddhist practices that I've encountered, or even any other Jewish meditations. This one is perhaps the one that can be used by anyone at any stage, in any frame of mind, no matter where you're at. You don't have to be at the peak of a mountain to use this one. It can be literally in the middle of the worst day. In fact, this meditation will work better the worse a day you're having, believe it or not, for reasons I'll explain. So we started this chapter by learning the principle from the Alter Rebbe that the way a face reflects in water, so does one heart reflect to another heart. So does one heart reflect to another heart. So what that means is, if my friend shows up and is smiling and loves me and has positive feelings about me, naturally in my heart, boom, I'm going to have love that reflects back. And that seems self-evident. If I meet an old friend after a long time and they're smiling and they love me, I love them back. But the same thing applies in a subtle way to any situation or any relationship. If an organization decides they want me to join, that old joke, I would never join a club that would have me as a member, it does not apply, right? It does not apply. In fact, if any organization sent me a letter saying, we hope you'll join, we heard about you, we think you're amazing, you bring so much to our organization, inside I have a feeling of warmth in my heart that's automatic. Now maybe I have free will, maybe I'll decide to not reflect that love back and join the club, etc., for whatever reasons. But there's a natural flow of love that happens inside, and that's any relationship. And even if I'm not aware that the person loves me, the Alter Rebbe says, our souls are connected at a subconscious level, right? At a subconscious level. This is before psychology realized that there is a collective unconscious. And in that collective unconscious, my soul knows that your soul is loving my soul, and there's a subconscious flow that I may not be aware of. But even if it's subtle, it always applies. If someone loves me, now I will love them back. And then the Alter Rebbe told us a story. He said, imagine this, and this is the content of our meditation, the beginning of it. Imagine there was the greatest possible ruler you could imagine. Let's say a king that ruled over many lands, and was not just great in terms of the number of lands and subjects they ruled over, but also intrinsically great. They were wise, and they were charismatic, and they were caring, the most beloved figure in the kingdom. And then imagine that I was not just little me with my Narishkeit, but I was actually a peasant, discarded by society, and living on a garbage heap, on a garbage dump, with no friends, with no hope, with no future, with no resources, and I'm living this miserable life. And now imagine this great ruler, this great king, leaves their palace with their whole retinue and marches right up to my garbage heap and says, Michael, I'm going to lift you up out of the heap, me, myself. I'm coming myself. I'm not sending a messenger. And I'm going to bring you into the castle, through room after room, past where any servant has ever gone, to my own private chamber. And there we will sit, and I'm going to hear all your thoughts and all your feelings, and we'll hug and we'll kiss and we'll be the best of friends. If two equals, that rule applies. If someone who is my quote-unquote equal loves me, I will automatically love them back. Imagine, the Alter Rebbe said, how much love this peasant will feel for this great ruler in this story. Their heart, if it was made of stone, would melt and flow and would burst with an overwhelming love. So that is the story, the mashal that we're working with, and it's important to have that clear in your mind, to have the images and the feelings clear in your mind, because then we're going to move and say, look at every detail of this story and how it applies between us and the infinite. Between us and the infinite. Because the infinite is so far beyond us, way beyond any possible ruler. This great ruler and me, the peasant, we're both human beings, and there's some point of reference. No matter how much greater they are, there's some point of reference. With the Ein Sof, now you're talking about total infinity. You're talking about something so beyond us, there is no point of reference between us. So you can't compare the difference between an earthly ruler and how I would feel if the Ein Sof expressed love to me. And then look how we were in Egypt, which was the garbage dump of the cosmos. It was the most impure place, and we were engaging in idol worship and trapped there and almost lost ourselves to the 50th gate of impurity, as we learn. And then God didn't just send an angel, God's self came personally to take us out, just like I would show up to my own wedding canopy. I wouldn't let anyone else do it, right, as we discussed. God came, God's self, right to Egypt and pulled us out, and then brought us where? To Mount Sinai, where God shared God's most intimate desires for the world, which is the Torah. And no one else had seen this. No servant, no one. This was meant just for us. And that was, as we'll learn, like our wedding with God. It was a moment of total unity with God. And so if this peasant feels love automatically to the king, imagine how much love we must feel when the Ein Sof ignored all these infinite regiments and infinite spiritual worlds and came down right to us in Egypt and pulled us out. And really this story applies to us. And the reason why the Alter Rebbe began this chapter with twice me'od, very, very. So this meditation, this ability to love God and have love and awe infuse every one of your prayers and every one of your mitzvahs and all your learning. It's not just very accessible, it's very, very accessible, is because of this. Every other meditation we've learned, either I need to work on myself and refine myself because I need to become more sensitive to abstract ideas and less sensitive to brownies and naps and physical stuff. And the more I work on myself, the more these meditations land, and the more my emotions are godly emotions, so to speak. Divine soul emotions, let's call them. Last chapter, we learned one that didn't depend on that. Even if I was in a lowly state, it still worked. But this chapter, we're actually leveraging my lowly state. We're leveraging my lowly state. So in fact, the worse off I am, the lower I am, the more I really am sitting, so to speak, on a garbage dump because I have toxic emotions perhaps that I'm working with, or I have habits that have formed over many years that I'm working with, or I don't have the knowledge that I'd like to have, and I feel like I'm fumbling around, unable to access texts, and really just, starting on my education. However lowly my senses of myself, that's exactly the fuel that will cause this love to grow even brighter. Because it's the difference between the king and the peasant that causes that love to reflect in an even brighter way. So this meditation applies to anyone, anywhere, no matter what day you're having, no matter what state you're in. In fact, the lower state you are in, the more this meditation works. And hence, the Alter Rebbe put in me'od. This is a very, very accessible meditation. And I'll share personally, it's inspired me for years. I really, in real time, pull this one out, and whether it's in the morning, sitting and meditating as part of my morning prayers, or whether it's during the day when I need to get back to an anchor and find inspiration, I have used this meditation often, and I invite others to do so. So that's a quick recap of where we are. Let me check. I wonder if there's any questions on Facebook. Hello, looking at the comments. Oh. Hold on, I'll catch up with you. I'm looking at last week's class here. But any questions from in the class today before we start? Yes, Sue Ellen.
I have a question about meditation. Mm-hmm. Do you want me to wait to the end, or now is a good time before we start text?
Go ahead.
So if when we're meditating and we have all these different meditations, I get caught up in the whole story. I lose my breath. If I can come back to my breath, then I'm okay in meditation and I get calmed down. But are we meditating, for example, in this chapter on the fact that God loves us? Are we meditating on the story? I'm having a hard time picking out those threads that you put in the gate when you open your wisdom gate.
Very, very good question, Sue Ellen. And I know many people I've spoken to, and many people watching now or in the future may have the same response, the sense that, I've lost my breath, and especially, there's so many details in this imagery, and that distracts me, and then I lose my breath. So I have to come back to my breath and get the breath flowing as we do at the end of class in the 4 even cycles, etc., or just have an awareness of the breath, correct? And then now I'm meditating again. But the sense is, if I've lost my breath, now I've lost the meditation. Am I understanding the question correctly?
Yes. And when we're meditating, are we meditating on the entire story? Are you meditating on a thread from the story? I mean, the whole story, or the whole concept sometimes is more than my mind can handle in a meditation.
Yes, it's interesting. Your question answers your question from the point of view of chokhmah or bina, right? Because Eastern meditation, and it's important to reiterate this so many times, because many of us, myself included, first learned to meditate with Eastern traditions, where you do want constant awareness of your breathing, and you keep the awareness on the breathing, or sometimes on a candle, they'll do that, but something with no intrinsic content, let's call it. And just the keeping of the awareness on the breath, or on the candle, or on the mantra, that opens up a space where the ego is able to dissolve, let's call it. And the training is to keep yourself focused for long periods of time, say on the breath. And the meditation, you don't really want complex content, because that's a distraction, right? And that is meditating on the side of chokhmah. That will ignite chokhmah, and the more we're able to keep our mind still and focus on the breathing, chokhmah will ignite, and you can access states of consciousness that are beyond the normal, stable, rational perception. But we're not doing that, because the point of Jewish meditation is not to gain that kind of enlightenment, although you can actually gain enlightenment beyond that with Jewish meditation, but that's still not the point. It's not why we're doing it, it's just a byproduct. Jewish meditation, we actually want to create emotions. And we create emotions not by emptying the mind, but by filling the mind with a divine concept, and now we're meditating on the side of Bina. So that's why we have this struggle sometimes. We say, well, there's so many details in these stories, and there's so many threads, and do I look at the whole thing, or do I look at one piece, and it's so distracting, I forgot that I was breathing, am I still, right? And so from our training in perhaps Zen meditation or yogic meditation, we want to return and put a pause on the content of the meditation and focus on the breathing to get back to that flow, and then, okay, maybe revisit the content. But in fact, it's fine. Once I've used the breathing technique to create a level playing field and to create a neutral mind and stillness, and then I insert the content, it's less important to continue the focus on the breathing than it is to fill the mind with the content, because we're meditating on the side of Bina. And we should still keep the breath flowing evenly. We want to do that, and over time, that'll become just an embedded part of how I meditate. But I'm really pushing us to meditate on the side of Bina, and that means the story has many details, or the divine concept has many details, and those details are filling the mind more and more. And the image is not, say, a still surface of a lake. The image is a cup of wine being filled to the very top. And our capacity for Bina is such that we can master many, many details. We can incorporate many details, and it's beyond the scope of this class. But the Mittler Rebbe in particular, the Alter Rebbe's son, describes how when you meditate on many details and you get to the depth of those details, the 50th gate of those details, now you get not to Chokhmah, but to the source of Chokhmah. Because there's something about how all the details work together that leaps beyond just the spark of the beginning of consciousness. It actually gets to the source of that spark. But I don't want to, that's a profound conversation. But just nuts and bolts practically, this meditation, if I lose my breath for a little while, that's fine. It's more important to focus on the story. And whether it's one thread of the story that you're focusing on, or the entire picture of the story, how it moves, how the pictures are, whether it's bright or not bright, that's your own personal flow. And really, wherever you are is fine, as long as you're asking the mind to fill more and more with the details. You know, you could almost call it a contemplation instead of meditation, but I don't want to use that language because it really is meditation, even more powerful than Eastern meditation.
Thank you.
Yeah?
That's helpful. Yes. Thank you.
It's a very important distinction. I know the feeling. It's like, there's so many parts in this story. Oops, I forgot I was breathing, right? Isn't that bad? It's fine. The breathing, once you establish the breathing, let that become just a natural habit. We're going to use habit for good, and focus on the content, because that's the Bina meditation we're doing. And dot, as we said, right? We want to engender feelings, so it's Bina and dot. Any other questions? Might there be another question before I jump in? Hi, Marta. Good to have you watching. Anyone watching, please put comments. Happy to have you. So we're top of page 709. V'zeo shomrim asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav.
This is the meaning of the text of various blessings pronounced by one fulfills a mitzvah. Blessed be he who has betrothed us by his commandments.
So we just went through, I left out a little about the whole section about how when we're doing a mitzvah, we learned that everything in created reality hides God's essence, God's face, God's panim, right? And it's only a mitzvah where I look in and it's transparent. I'm seeing right through reality to God's essence. It's still condensed. It still looks like a physical cup of wine that I'm blessing, but that's God's ratzon, elyon. That's God's highest essence is right there in the mitzvah, staring right at me. It's not hidden. So every time we do a mitzvah, it's like God's hugging us. We're connected to God with a oneness. Every time we learn Torah and speak it like we're doing now, that's like God kissing our mouth, like these friends kissing each other on the cheek, perhaps. And then every time I understand Torah, that creates a oneness, like a married couple that is now sharing a life together as one being. Right? Two halves of one soul coming together. This state of oneness, that's expressed every time we use the very familiar phrase, Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav. Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav. Can you think of another phrase that Jewish people say more often, and that maybe has become more shallow by use, that we just throw it off? Oh, the blessing of the candles, and we just kind of throw it off. We attach it to everything. We're blessing bread, and we just skim over it, and perhaps we don't realize, surely we don't realize the depth the Alter Rebbe is talking about here. When we say Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav, what we're saying is God didn't just make us holy, because that's the plain meaning, right? Kitshanu, that made us holy with God's mitzvahs. But in fact, God is experiencing kiddushin with us. God is marrying us. Kiddushin is marriage, and is uniting with us like a married couple unites. And secondly, not only united, but God is elevating us to the level of God's holiness, which can't even enter the world. So that word, kitshanu, doesn't just mean made us holy, it means actually married us. Mekadesh us, right? Actually did the ritual of kiddushin, which is marriage. And if I can try to absorb both the enormity of what that means to be completely united with God's holiness, and to think that happens every time I do a mitzvah, any little mitzvah, I throw out, oh, let me say a blessing, let me this, let me that, and I'm so used to saying it. Can I stop and can I appreciate God's telling me, when you do that mitzvah, when you bless that challah, when you read the Purim scroll, you're getting married to me right now. This is a wedding. This is like a once in a lifetime moment with flowers and music and crying, and we're saying vows. Don't skip this moment over. You're being united with the Ein Sof, right? This is your marriage. And in fact, if we look at a wedding couple, we see that in fact it is one of the highest unities that exists in the world, right? That relationship. I know it's not the most stable relationship. I know that often marriages can be tricky and sometimes even hard and toxic or not last, because it's not the most stable relationship, but it is the most profound relationship. In that, even with my kids, God forbid, you have trouble with your kids, right? They're everything to me, but they have their life and I have my life, right? If they're healthy, they're out, they're learning, they're growing, they're working, they're making a family. It's their life and it's my life. With my parents, of course, I would give my life for them. I do anything for them, but they have their life, I have my life. A married couple, you share a life. You share a life totally. And because of that, it is considered not just two beings in one relationship, but one being that's come back together again. Two halves of a soul that have come back together. And when it's working, that really allows God to enter into the world right in that relationship. It's the most unifying relationship, and that's why King Solomon wrote Song of Songs, trying to get at, the most beautiful oneness, and he chose the oneness between a husband and wife in that case. So let's go on. Ki Adam hamakadesh isha liot miuchedet imo biyuchad gamur kmo shekatuv v'davak b'ishto v'hayu levasar echad.
Like a man who betroths a wife so that she be united with him in a perfect bond, as it is written, and he shall cleave to his wife, and they shall be one flesh.
Right, so we have here a biblical text, and we're reminded of how all the animals were created in pairs, male and female. But among the traditions in our Torah, we understand that human being was created male and female as one, and then separated. Right? Why did God do that? Why did God create us as one and then have to do a surgery? Could God not have just said, "You'll probably want partnership, so let me create two"? God wanted to demonstrate to us, our tradition says, that really a married couple is one being. And they were separated only so they could come back together and be two halves of the same soul. So such a high unity. And we're adding this to our meditation. We're not just considering the Ein Sof like a ruler that came down and picked me out of the garbage heap, but actually like my married partner, like someone that loves me and is sharing my life with me every time I do a mitzvah. Kacha mamash v'yeter al ken la'in ketz hu yichud nefesh elokit ha'oseket b'torah mitzvot v'nefesh ha'chiyunit l'vushehan hanizkarim le'el be'or Ein Sof baruch hu. I think Doreen, why don't you go ahead if you want to unmute? We're at exactly similar. There you go. Have you got the reading in front of you, Doreen?
Oh, yes. Exactly similar to the unity achieved through betrothal, and even infinitely surpassing it, is a union of the divine soul that is engaged in Torah and the commandments, and of the vivifying soul, and their garments referred to above, that is thought, speech, and action, all of them becoming united with the light of the blessed Ein Sof.
So that's what happens. I may not be aware, I may skip over it, but if I stop and consider, my divine soul is being united with a holiness that cannot even enter the world, that's beyond any of the physical world or the spiritual worlds. It's being united just like at a marriage. In fact, many of our marriage traditions come from Sinai, and the idea that there's a chuppah over our head and the mountain was over our head. That's Sinai is the archetype of a marriage relationship, and every time we do a mitzvah, we go right back to that spot. If we can just appreciate that, now this love that will form in my heart, this reflected love, and I realize how much attention the infinite is paying to me, that these mitzvahs are scattered all around me. I pick them up, and I'm now united. Little me with my limited awareness. Now I'm going to feel such a love in my heart. It's overwhelming. Are you guys going with me? Because I feel like there's an emotional track here, and there's a lot of ideas, but the ideas are there to connect to the emotions. Yeah, how is this landing on you guys? Thumbs up? Yes, Eleanor?
The only thought that's running through my mind, and it's a funny one, is that I shouldn't have been such a good person. I should have been a little more lowlier, and then I could have united with God in a bigger way.
I haven't heard anyone go to that extent. It's like, oh, now I feel bad that I was so good, because then if I had been worse, then this would be a more powerful meditation. If only. That kind of stuff only works in in retrospect, right? You know, that I look back and I say, oh, I made these mistakes. I had to make the mistakes genuinely. I can't decide to be lowly in order to experience, you know, the reflected love. But yeah, I get what you mean. ולכן המשיל שלמה עליו השלום בשיר השירים, ייחוד זה לייחוד חתן וכלה.
Therefore did Solomon, peace unto him, in the Song of Songs, compare this union of God and Jews through Torah and mitzvot with the union of bridegroom and bride.
בדביקה, חשיקה וחפיצה, בחיבוק ונישוק. Paula, you want to unmute for us? And then Ruth, you'll be next if you got the reading. We're top of 710, this union.
Is it working? There,
Yeah,
oh good,
yeah.
my microphone's working, okay. This union being with attachment, an external level of unity with longing, a more inward level of unity and desire, an even more inward level of unity with embrace and kissing.
Of course, we have many levels to this unity, and there's tremendous Hasidus written on all these different levels we're talking about. But suffice it to say, every level of unity there is, in if you remember to your wedding day and the unity you experienced and the unity you continue to experience over years of marriage together, God willing, all of those are summed up every time we say Asher Kitshanu b'mitzvotav and we do some mitzvah. That's the infinite source of the universe paying direct attention to us and bringing us to that kind of unity, that kind of loving embrace. And how much, if I'm aware, my heart automatically will respond to love, how must it be responding, maybe beyond my habitual awareness, to that love that's being shown to me every time I engage in a mitzvah? And it's there throughout the day, like we said. It's a mitzvah to love another Jew like you love yourself. Love your neighbor like yourself. That's a mitzvah. So walk out of your house, look to the left, look to the right, and now do this mitzvah and recognize you're being united with the source of the universe just by trying to love another person. It drives me crazy how accessible it is and how profound it is. I love it.
Can I ask a question? In a
Yes, sir.
marriage like my own, we've been married 57 years.
Mazel tov.
We always say the main reason that we remained married is because we couldn't afford a divorce. So, so when you look at different types of marriages of different time elements, is there like a scale of some type of that this is better than that, or how does that appear? How does that reflect on our relationship with God?
It's a related question, Ruth. I don't want to go too far into, sort of early romantic infused love of a married couple versus 50 years on, which I'm only at 17 years, so I can't even understand the depth of that. First, let me say I'm so glad you guys didn't retire in Mexico, where divorces are cheaper. And something like, we know that romantic love is flashy and you feel it and it's fiery and you see it on their face and people are buying flowers and expressing themselves. It's powerful, but it's not always deep. And obviously over time, that love goes deeper and deeper and deeper, and the unity goes deeper and deeper and deeper. And that a couple married for 30, 40, 50 years, by sharing a joke like you do, or by sitting on the porch in their rocking chairs or playing a game of Scrabble, just quietly being together after all that time, sharing their life, they're expressing a love that's so much deeper than a 25-year-old that's can't stop thinking about someone they met and is going crazy, right? So it's all part of it. But rest assured, when you've been in a relationship for decades and decades, that is the most profound love we know of, and it's just getting deeper every year. And so the same thing.
When you realize that it's temporary, like our life is temporary. It's at this stage of the game, we feel everything is finite, but we appreciate the moment.
Good. And of course, the same thing applies to our love with God. I may be in the habit of, I don't know, putting on tefillin or putting $1 in a tzedakah box every morning, and maybe I've done it for 60 years or 70 years, and there's just a quiet routine to it. But that relationship with God gets deeper on our end as well.
Okay.
We are, I think, V'zehu Shomrim Asher Kitshan B'mitzvotav.
Yeah, I found it. This is also the meaning of the blessing alluded to above, who has sanctified us by his commandments, the verb kishanu, who has sanctified us, here meaning.
So we've looked at the first element of meaning, and remember, this is for our meditation. This is all in order to ignite love in me, recognizing how much love God is showing to me. So the first level of Asher Kitshanu is that we're like a married couple. We're Makadesh with the Ein Sof. We're being married to the infinite every time we do a mitzvah. And now the second that we've discussed is not only am I being united, I'm being elevated to the level of Kadosh Elyon. So infinity has light that comes out and is able to relate to the world and come in and be a physical body or a bottle or a tree or a house or whatever, and it relates to the world. It's forming the world. But then there's Kadosh Elyon, or Kodesh Elyon, and that's the holiness of the Ein Sof that doesn't even enter into the world and can't relate to the world. The entire world doesn't exist. None of these spiritual worlds, none of the infinite regiments of angels, they're all completely nullified, and God's just alone, like before creation, saying, I don't know, I'm holy to the point that I'm so separate from the universe, it doesn't exist. I can't even relate to it. My light can't enter into it. It's that level that we're being united with. That level is beyond anything we could even relate to in any of the worlds, no matter how holy the worlds are. We're being united with that private level of Kodesh Elyon, of that holiness of God's essence that is the same now as it was before anything was created. And if that doesn't blow your mind with reflected love and ignite your heart, sit for another 3 minutes and keep picturing it in your mind until it does, because it's guaranteed. It's guaranteed. Shehelenu lemalat kodesh alyon baruch hu, she kedushato shel hakadosh baruch hu, bichvodo uve'atzmo. I think we're back to Sue Ellen.
That he has elevated us to the heights of the supreme holiness, which is the holiness of the Holy One. Blessed be he himself.
Kodesh Alyon. That's not some level of holiness in the created world. That's that completely separate level of God's holiness. That nothing exists compared to it, and it's separate from everything. Boom, and we're right there. Kedusha hi lishon havdala ma shekadosh baruch hu muvdal me haolamot.
Kedusha, holiness, is a term indicating separateness, in that the Holy One, blessed be he, is apart from the worlds.
V'hi b'chinat sovev kol amin ma she'eino yachol hitlabesh bahen. Go ahead, Doreen. This being the quality.
This being the quality of encompassing all worlds, being unable to clothe himself within them.
I think of the love that God showed us by doing this trick, right? And, we work and work just to peek into the spiritual world and just to get some glimpse of beyond and some taste of transcendence. And yet just scattered in the physical world are these mitzvahs, and we just pick them up and go ahead with this key we've been given, and boom, we jump past every possible level and united like a married couple and raised up to the level of total holiness, totally separate from the world that can't even enter into any world. Ki al yedei yichud hanefesh v'hitkalaluta be'or Ein Sof baruch hu harehi b'malat u'madregat kedushat Ein Sof baruch hu mamash. Hoi.
For through the union of the soul with and its absorption into the light of the Ein Sof, it attains the quality and the degree of holiness of the blessed Ein Sof himself.
And it's interesting, they didn't translate mamash, I'm noticing, right? Can anyone find through the union of the soul with and absorption into the light of the Ein Sof, it attains the quality and the degree of holiness of the Ein Sof himself? I guess himself is supposed to mean mamash, but mamash means the opposite of metaphorically, tangibly, actually, physically, like literally, right? And when the Alter Rebbe uses that word mamash, he's saying this is not some inspired, think of this, and you're not really there. Mamash, you really are there, right? And it's hitkalutai. It's hitkalut means inter-inclusion, incorporation. So my divine soul, when I do a mitzvah, it actually is literally inter-included with that level of holiness that can't enter the universe. And the Alter Rebbe says mamash. It's incredible to meditate on.
Since it unites himself with him and is integrated into him, and they become truly one.
וזהו שכתוב, והייתם לי קדושים, כי קדוש אני השם, ואבדיל אתכם מן העמים להיות לי. Where are we at? Sorry, I lost track.
Paula. I think it's Paula.
Yeah. Paula, will you go ahead? This is the meaning? Yes.
Here it is. This is the meaning of the verse. Am I in the right place?
Yeah, that's correct.
And you shall be holy unto me, for I, the Lord, am holy. The verse gives us the reason for the Jews' sanctity, connecting it with God's supreme holiness, which Jews can attain through Torah and mitzvot. And I have separated you from other peoples that you should be mine. Here we see that holiness implies separation, as mentioned earlier.
Right, and it's also saying that the level of holiness we go to is God's level of holiness, right? Heitem li kedoshim ki kadosh ani. You're going to be holy to me because I'm holy, and you're holy to me at my level of holiness, not at your level of holiness. So Michael Smolash, this does not depend on you being a holy person. It does not depend on you having good knowledge and having a heart that's been clear of any narishkeit. It's just the opposite. The lower you are, the more you're going to be inspired with love by this meditation, because I'm bringing you up to my level of holiness, and you're holy to me because I'm holy. V'omer v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'item kedoshim lelechem ani Hashem Elohechem v'gomer. Ruth, why don't you go ahead? Another verse.
Okay. Another verse states, you shall fulfill all my commandments and be holy unto your God. I am the Lord your God. The term your God is the possessive form. Recall to the relationship set up and embrace, similar to a person embracing his friend with his body and arms. Is that right? What I learned?
Yeah.
Okay.
So in this text, it's highlighted in so many ways. God says, you're going to do my mitzvahs, and you're going to be holy. You're going to be holy to me because I am your God. And this relationship, I am your God, now this infinite separate thing that can't possibly relate to me, suddenly that's my God, like it's my spouse, like it's my married couple. And I'm, again, lifted up to the level of the infinite's holiness through the infinite's mitzvahs. And we'll see how that also applies and brings us to the level of the patriarchs, who were actual chariots and did relate consciously at every moment to God as if God was their God. And we say Elokei Avraham, Elokei Yitzchak, because they had this unity, this oneness with God that was right there in their minds every moment of their life. Perush ki al yedei kiyum hamitzvot hareini Eloah shalachem.
The meaning is that through the fulfillment of the commandment, I become your God in the same manner.
And so just like, as we'll learn, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and also Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, they all were operating at such a level that God wasn't this separate God and they were trying to connect. God was the God of Abraham. God was the God of Isaac. To them, they were totally connected, and God became their personal God. Like it had their stamp on it, right? It had the ring of marriage on it. And they were so close and so unified, all the time that God was their God. So when we do a mitzvah, we now enter into the same kind of relationship. And God says, I'm your God now, just like I was with the patriarchs. For them, they were aware of it. They were like a chariot every moment of their life. And maybe Smolash, you can only meditate on it when you carefully consider it, and it'll create emotions. But it doesn't make a difference. As we'll learn, no matter how covered up my awareness is, no matter how my physical body gets in the way of me appreciating this, it is still true every time I do a mitzvah. I'm raised up to that sense of that level of unity. Any questions about this? Noreen?
I don't have a question, but in the Moses' song, we have "This is my God." You know, those words are. It's interesting that we're saying it today because it brings that to mind. That that relationship is, "This is my God, and I will glorify him, my Father's God, and I will exalt him."
Exactly, and we can read it as just poetry when we chant it tomorrow night at Shabbat Shirah.
Yeah.
Or we can see the deeper meaning when we say, this infinite, beyond any possible relationship with any level of the cosmos is now my God, like my wife is my wife, and we have this unity. And that a mitzvah brings us to that level, boom, automatically. And of course, Moshe was aware of that, just like Abraham was.
Just the recognition that through that experience, that's how that came, in part, how that came about, too, I think.
Yes, beautiful.
Yeah.
כמו אלוקי אברהם אלוקי יצחק וכו'. Noreen, you want to continue as God is called?
The God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and so on.
שנקרא כן מפני שהאבות היו בחינת מרכבה לא יתברך.
All thus because the patriarchs were on the level of a vehicle unto him.
All right, so we learned every time we do a mitzvah, because the mitzvah doesn't hide God's face, we can function at the level of the patriarchs. We can be a merkava for that moment. We can be nullified in the mitzvah. And now we're remembering that every time we do that, we're united with the Ein Sof, united at the level of Kodesh Elyon. Uvetelim v'nichlalim be'oro.
And they were nullified and absorbed in his light.
So just like they were, v'chacha hu bechol nefesh misrael bishat esek haTorah v'hamitzvot.
So it is with the soul of every Jew at the time he is occupied with Torah and the commandments.
And Paul, you'll go next. V'lachen chivu Rabbeinu zichronam livracha lakum v'lamod mipnei kol esek b'mitzvah imim hu bur v'am haaretz. I think you're still muted there, Paula. And we're top of 713. You're waving your hands, but I don't know what you're saying. Yeah, there you go. Good.
There was something covering my whole screen, and supposedly wants me to buy it.
Uh-huh.
I can't there.
Don't buy that stuff.
I won't. Therefore, the sages of blessed memory made it. Am I in the right spot again? Yes.
Correct.
Made it obligatory to rise and remain standing in the presence of anyone who is engaged in fulfilling a commandment, even if the latter is uncultured and illiterate. When such a person performs a mitzvah, such as bringing bikurim, the first fruits, to the Beit HaMikdash, one must rise before him.
Right, so there's a whole discussion in the Gemara about why you have to rise in front of someone doing a mitzvah and which mitzvahs you have to rise. And there's opinions that you have to rise before anyone doing any mitzvah. And in fact, there's a discussion, often we see when someone carries a deceased person, a deceased person, everyone rises when they pass by, when they're carrying the coffin. And we might think automatically, they're rising out of respect for the deceased person. But in fact, the Gemara says right there, no, they're not rising to honor the deceased person. They're rising to honor the person carrying the deceased person because they're doing a mitzvah. And when you see someone doing a mitzvah, now they've risen up to the level of God's holiness. You're looking at actual holiness in the world. And so, of course, you stand like you stand for a Torah scroll. And it doesn't matter whether you're A bur is like someone that hasn't worked on themselves, someone that's like coarse. And amaretz is someone that doesn't have like a real deep education, you know, someone that, you know, like me, I don't read Aramaic, I can't open up Gemara and just kind of go, you know, I got to rely on translations. So, you know, that includes someone like myself who just, you know, I haven't like spent my whole youth becoming familiar with texts, and I can't just go and swim in them, right? So no matter what level you're at, whether you're someone that's coarse and is not appreciative of holiness, or if you're someone that doesn't have the kind of knowledge that's considered, you know, that you'd stand in front of a Torah sage, it makes no difference, because whoever you are, if you're doing a mitzvah, the opinion of the Gemara says everyone has to rise in front of you, because now you are united with the Ein Sof like in a marriage, with total oneness. And not just holiness, but God's level of holiness is walking right in front of them. How could you not stand up? Rick, you look like you got a question or a concern. No? I'm misreading? Okay.
No, I just was thinking that, I mean, we do mitzvahs all the time, constantly.
Right.
So people don't stand up for us. I mean, so I don't understand this section of this Gemara, to be honest.
Yeah, so it's not standard halacha that everybody, when anyone sees anyone doing any mitzvah, must stand up. That's not like in the Shulchan Aruch that is codifying halacha. I don't believe that is practice. But there are people that follow the opinion that when they see someone doing a mitzvah, they should stand, and that's any mitzvah. And there's no negative. I mean, it just fills you with a more state of reverence. I mean, and probably you get more squats in a day, right? But
is that like the Gemara says that you stand for somebody above you, or a king, or royalty, or that kind of stuff?
I don't know which conversation you're quoting, but you know, you stand out of respect for someone older than you. But here we're talking about like you stand for Torah, right? Okay. When you take the Torah, everybody stands up. Like we know that because the Torah is God's chokhmah. You know, we believe that is holiness entering into the world. So you stand in front of the Torah. So really, it's best compared to that. That, you know, and feel free if you want to, on occasion, if you see him doing a mitzvah and you're thinking about this chapter, just stand up out of reverence and see if you feel a little deeper about it. But no, it's not standard halakha that if I see if I see Chaim Yankel putting a coin in a tzedakah box, suddenly I gotta jump out of my seat. You know, I'd probably never sit down all day. But the inspiration is actually discussed because that is an opinion in the Gemara that one of the sages says no, this applies to every mitzvah, and argues that we really should have to stand up whenever we see anybody do a mitzvah. And because it's an opinion, it's there with some reality, even though it's not followed literally these days.
Okay, fine.
All right, let's pause there, top of 7:13, and do a little meditation to finish, because we want to be working ourselves to make this real, to bring our dot into this and not have it be ideas in a book. So if you're with us, hi Abba Mori, good to have you watching. My dad's on, everyone else is watching. Please join us in this meditation. You just find yourself in a comfortable spot. And as Sue Ellen reminded us, we're going to be doing a quick, simple breathing pattern to create an even playing field in my mind. You can close your eyes. But we don't need to be overly focused on that breathing pattern once we start the meditation. Just try and let it flow naturally. And over time, it becomes just a stable part of my productive habits. So let's let our breath deepen. Let your face relax. All your muscles fall hanging from the skull and from their attachments. Shoulders hanging from the spine. Become aware of the weight of your body in the seat you're on and the weight of your feet on the floor. Deepen your breath once again. We'll smooth out our breathing into 4 stages. Each stage having 4 counts. So 4 counts to breathe in, 4 counts to keep the breath in, 4 counts then to breathe out, and then 4 counts to remain empty. So start together with me, breathing in on 1, 2, 3, 4. Stay full. 2, 3, 4. Emptying out. 2, 3, 4. Remaining empty. 2, 3, Starting over again, breath goes out, in, 3, 4, stay full, 2, 3, 4, release out, 2, 3, 4, and stay empty, 2, 3. Start over on your own. As you follow the cycle, you'll notice many changes to the state of calm in your body, the flow of mind, the flow of the heart. Many, many measurable positive benefits to just this breathing pattern. Keep it going. We're also going to open up a wisdom gateway. As we described, it's the space between the end of my in-breath and the beginning of my out-breath. There's an emptiness, a space between the end of the in-breath and the beginning of the out-breath. Let it open in your own consciousness. As our wisdom gateway, our gateway for Chokhmah, as we continue breathing. Of course, at any point, if you want to take 5 minutes to let the breathing pattern establish or to let the wisdom gateway open, pause your device if you're listening in the future, and stay in that stage of the meditation. If you're in our class in real time, we'll move on, and let's bring the divine concept we've been learning about into our wisdom gateway. Just picture that metaphor, that mashal that the Alter Rebbe has been teaching us. How would I feel if a great ruler came and pulled me out of a garbage heap and brought me to their most private room and shared the most intimate moments, and we had the unity almost of a married couple, and how my love would reflect that love. If you like, add the details where it's not an earthly ruler, but it's the Ein Sof, the most absolute, infinite holiness that can't even enter into the universe, and I'm united with that right now. Work, just stay in your meditation. Take another minute or so here in our class. No need to finish with us. Again, if you're joining us, reviewing this class in the future, feel free to pause your device and stay in this delicious meditation and let these emotions, this reflected love, deepen in your heart. It is a tool to infuse everything you do in the day, to share with the people in your life, to infuse with the productive things you do, with the learning you do, and to let it rise up and unite again with the Ein Sof itself. If you're in this class, let's wiggle our toes and fingers and open our eyes. Wonderful work. Thanks, everyone. It's so great to have you here in our class. And as I always say, if you'd like to join and be on the Zoom or even in person when we're able to, please email Maya at temple-israel.org. She'll share with you the links and the schedule. Thanks for learning with us, and we'll see you next class.